I'm often asked why I stopped making God of War theories, especially since God of War 2018 came out, like this type of content became my bread and butter. So why is it that I haven't made a nice and juicy theory in a while? It's not because I've fallen out of love with the series as many people seem to think. I just don't think there's anything substantial that God of War Ragnarok left for us to theorize about like God of War 2018 did. So naturally I wasn't able to make that many God of War theories this time around. But the other day, I decided to play, well, God of War Ragnarok. And it was during my trip to Jotunheim that I was reminded of something. Something I think everyone has forgotten. And that is the giant's prophecy about Mimir. Now I'll be honest, this mystery has never been seen by fans to have the same level of importance as say the other part of the mural or even the mystery of who blew the horn. But I think you only have to think about this piece of the mural for a few seconds to realize that this is indeed a very juicy mystery that God of War 2018 left for us. Because if the mural is depicting an image from the future, we have to ask ourselves why Mimir is back on the tree. Because we all know that after God of War 2018, we can always find Mimir comfortably on Kratos' hip. So why is he back on the tree in this prophecy? One way fans have tried to solve this mystery is by saying that this part of the prophecy already came true in God of War 2018. The mural clearly depicts Mimir on a tree, so this must be depicting a moment in Mimir's life when he was imprisoned by Odin. Another way to explain this mystery is by saying that this prophecy did in fact come true, as there's a moment in God of War Ragnarok where we temporarily see Mimir back on the tree. But as you probably guessed it, I have a problem with both of these theories. First, I don't think this is a prophecy of the moment when Kratos and Atreus met Mimir atop the mountain in Midgard, because the mural in Jotunheim clearly separates the stories found in both games. On the left side of the mural, we see how the giants prophesied the story we experienced in God of War 2018, while on the right side, we see how they prophesied the story we experienced in God of War Ragnarok. Now, this side of the mural is really hard to see in God of War 2018, but we get a clearer view of it in God of War Ragnarok. In the center, we see the moment when Atreus met Angrboda. On the far right, we see the moment when Atreus met Heimdall. On the lower left, we see the death of Kratos, who was eventually replaced by Odin. Next to it, we see the moment when Atreus paid Odin a visit. And on the right side, we see Atreus walking alongside the wolves of Ironwood. All of these are moments we find in the story of God of War Ragnarok, which means it would be weird for this part of the mural to be the only one depicting a moment from God of War 2018. So maybe the other theory is correct, that this piece of the mural depicts the moment Kratos saw a vision of Mimir back on the tree, courtesy of course of the Norns. But I also have a problem with this theory. It seems very anticlimactic if the giants prophesied that one day Kratos would have a vision of Mimir being back on the tree. That doesn't really matter in the larger scheme of things. But it also doesn't make much sense because the Jotunheim mural is not a prophecy about Kratos. It's a prophecy about Atreus.
This is our story.
No. This is your story.
Meaning that everything we see in this mural pertains to Atreus' story in the Norse realm. In some instances we do see Kratos because he so happens to have been with Atreus during that moment in the story. But overall, Atreus is the important one, not Kratos. So it doesn't really make sense for the giants to have prophesied that Kratos one day would have a vision about Mimir. Meaning that this is the only part of the mural that still really remains a mystery. But why didn't Santa Monica address it in God of War Ragnarok? I'm sure by now everyone knows where I'm going with this. It's a known fact that Cory Barlog had initially imagined the Norse saga to have 3 stories just like the Greek games, but due to multiple factors they decided to do a duology instead. Because of this, a lot of aspects of the original story were cut or altered in the final product. But that still leaves us with the question of how this scene would have played out in the sequel. Since Mimir is free from the tree by the end of God of War 2018, how would he have ended up on it again? Is it possible Odin would have captured and placed him back on the tree? This was a theory I read many years ago, and while I think it's interesting, I don't think it's correct. As you probably guessed it by now, I lean more in the direction of thinking that in the original story Cory had planned for the series, time was going to play a much bigger role than it did in the final game. In other words, I think either Kratos or Atreus, or just Atreus, was going to be traveling through time, which would give them the opportunity to visit Mimir in the past to relay some important information. Which would explain what Cory Barlog mentioned a couple of times during some interviews.
There's a bunch of stuff in the World Serpent talks. You have to rely on Mimir as giving you all the information, and he totally doesn't.
Yeah,
so
he says as much.
Yeah, there's lots of hidden little gems.
So yeah, Cory probably was planning something bigger for Mimir as well. It's really a shame that we'll never see this prophecy come true, right? Well, it's still somewhat possible we'll see this moment in the future. The truth is that there's only two directions Santa Monica could go with when it comes to Mimir's prophecy. Either it will join the many murals in the series that Santa Monica never did anything with, or they will find a way to address it in a future game. And the only way they could do the latter is if they still approach this mystery with time travel. Because no matter what, Mimir has to be back on the tree. And it turns out that we might still get a story where either Kratos or Atreus travels back in time. Because I don't know if you forgot about this little mystery, but Santa Monica still needs to answer the mystery of who blew the horn.
Somebody just called the serpent.
And I know I've said this many times before, but I really don't see another way to answer this mystery unless they use time travel. Well, there are a couple of ways to do it without time travel, but they would be pretty lame and anticlimactic if you ask me. They could reveal that it was Odin in disguise, or another character we haven't met yet. But any theory that suggests that something like this will happen fails to take into consideration how big of a mystery this is. This is something that our protagonists will have to be present the moment it's happening. And because this already happened, it means that they have to go back in time. So if they're at least doing it once, who's to say that they couldn't pay Mimir a visit as well? However, the difficulty the writers will have regarding these two topics is when to address them in the series. I personally think there's enough material in the Norse saga to make more games about the realm, but I get the feeling that Santa Monica is moving away from the Norse saga completely. The current rumor is that the next mainline God of War game will of course take place in Egypt, and we know that Atreus is also leaving the 9 realms, so how are they going to answer both of these mysteries? Both the mystery of the horn and Mimir being trapped in the tree once again are things that would be important to the Norse realm, but not really to the Egyptian realm, unless it's retconned somehow. My best guess is that this time traveling story will be reserved for a pivotal moment in the series, similar to Captain America picking up Mjolnir in the MCU. What the equivalent of this event will be, I don't know. But I think this is the only way for the writers to address both the mystery of who blew the horn as well as Mimir's prophecy. That is, if they still plan on answering the latter. But let me know what you think about Mimir's prophecy. This is something that I remember thinking about when God of War 2018 released, but after Ragnarok, for whatever reason, I forgot about it. Did the same happen to you? Do you think it will still be answered? Whatever your thoughts and theories are, make sure to leave them in the comments section below. As always, I want to give a big thanks to all of my YouTube and Patreon members for supporting the channel monthly. I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. It may not seem like much, but trust me, it really does help. And with that said, thanks for watching, and remember, go forth in the name of Olympus.